Well, come April, it's a huge month for the UFC. Not only is it UFC 300, but it's something they're not looking forward to. There is a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit that has been put against the UFC for the way that they have paid fighters throughout the years. John Fitch, Kung Lee, Nathan Quarry, a lot of guys have been part of this. And it looks like it actually might end up in the courtroom. Doesn't look like the UFC is going to settle this. And there are several fighters that have said that they're going to be going and testifying for the UFC. Michael Bisping, Chael Sonnen, I believe Misha Tate, Michael Chandler, Donald Cerrone. What do you think about the whole situation?
I've said this for years that fighters, there will never be a union. There'll never be anything along those lines. You want to know why? Because we're seeing it right now. You can't even get them to agree on being part of a class action lawsuit that will potentially at least create a line of like where the limits are for them to treat fighters, on how to treat fighters. You can't even get them to do it. You've got fighters that are going to stick to the UFC side because they're all still working for them or under contract with them. And you got the fighters who are not with them anymore, the ones that are pushing on this. I guess the only way to look at it, and I'm not just pointing out the ones that have said they're going to testify on behalf of the UFC, because there's other ones that are with the UFC that would probably do the same thing that don't want to speak up. But if they are that convinced that the UFC is doing a great job, why are they not taking themselves off of that class action lawsuit?
Meaning that they're still able to get money if that lawsuit actually wins.
Yep.
They get money from being part of the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. So they're going to testify on behalf of the UFC. And then in the turn, if it doesn't get rewarded to the UFC, they will still get money from the class action lawsuit that they tried to test, or that they did testify against. I'm just asking, like, with that, how do you feel about that?
I look at the fighters, first off, obviously Michael Bisping is an announcer for the UFC. Obviously Chael Sonnen has been a guy working with the UFC for a long time. And I love both of those guys, and it's their choice. They could, and I know Chael, I've talked with him about this. He personally feels that the UFC treated him great, and I can't argue with him. He made a lot of money. He was put into a lot of situations. He stepped forward all the time for him. He was one of those yes guys. They asked him to do something. The answer was yes. And, they reciprocated. I can understand why he feels the way he does. Same with Michael Bisping. Michael Chandler is a guy that, you weren't there at the time for this lawsuit, and you're in a different situation. So I can understand Michael Chandler, saying, hey man, they treat me great. Okay. I'm not sitting there saying you shouldn't go and testify for the UFC. If that's the way you feel, then I think you should go testify for him. But to actually be part of the lawsuit and then testify, now take yourself off of that. You should be saying, hey, no, I don't believe in the lawsuit. And obviously, if you're testifying for the UFC, then you don't believe in the lawsuit. You should be taking your name off of that. But who am I to say? It's playing both sides of the game.
It is. It really is. But it also, this is what causes, I think, more of a divide between past fighters and the fighters that are still with the company. It creates that, like, this is where I am and this is where you are. It's the haves and the haves not, John. I think that's really what it comes down to. That's the way some of these fighters that are the ones pushing the class action lawsuit, is that they want to have what maybe those other fighters have now in those opportunities. They don't. And it just comes across, I think, from the ones that are pushing on the class action lawsuit. They feel like they got mistreated. Feel like they didn't get paid enough. They felt like that, they should have got paid more because the company was making more. I've said on here several times that I truly believe there needs to be like how they have an NFLPA, like a players association. There needs to be something like that for the fighters.
Yeah.
But you can't, I don't think you're going to ever be able to get to it because it's an individual thing. You're not part of a team, and that's why, like, there's always going to be someone that will just slide in because they want to be in the UFC. They want to be on TV. They want to be famous. They want to say that they fought there. I've had guys that were with other companies that were making good money, but they actually wanted to fight out their contracts so they could try to go to the UFC just to say that they made it there. I'm like, you're taking $20,000 less. Yeah, but I've always wanted to fight there, and it's like my dream to fight there, and I'm going to take less. All for what? And then they went there and they lost 2 fights, and then they got cut, and then for the promotion they left, didn't want them back. So in the long run, it didn't work out for them. I've just constantly just said that until there is a fighters like association, you don't need the Aldi Act. You need a fighters association to really sit down because they're treating this. The UFC is treating themselves like they are the NFL, like they are Major League Baseball, which means you need to have a fighters association. Until you have that, the Aldi Act is not going to fucking help you. It's not the same shit. Oh yeah, then champs can go fight here and champs go fight there. Yeah, then you get promoters that come in and then you get managers that come in and start doing what we do with boxing, and then it just changes the sport. The sport, everyone loves it the way it is, except we just want to make that one change with the fighters get a little bit more of the piece of the pie. Can we get, instead of 17%, can we get 19 to 20% right now? And then as it gets bigger, can we get to 23%? As you grow more worldwide, which they're doing, can we get 28%? It's going to take time. Let's not just go in there and go, you know what? We automatically deserve 40% now. Yeah, calm down, guys. Let's get it up to 23. Let's get up to 24. But none of that can be done until you get up like a fighters association or a players association, like how the NFL has, how Major League Baseball has, how these companies, how these other organizations have. And the UFC has always talked about treating it like it's been like the NFL, or it's been, something along those lines, but just with the same entertainment value of the WWE. So I'm interested to see on how they shape this inside the courtroom, on how the UFC is saying that their company should be ran, or what their business model is to keep them from having to pay the higher percentage to the fighters. But until these fighters can get together and stop stepping on each other, it's never going to happen, John. I know this class action will help them, but just the fighters during that time are going to get paid, and the ones after now are going to get fucked again. They're going to keep doing what they're going to keep getting away with until fighters decide to band together. And it can't just be the ones that are leaving. It's got to be the ones that are getting paid by them right now.
That's where your problem's at.
Because if you can't hurt them at the top.
If you can't get the leaders of the divisions to step up and say, all right, I'll take one for the team and go out there and put this on the line and say, hey, we need these things, and I'll step up to do those things. You'll never get anything going.
Let me just say this. This year when the Chiefs started playing, Chris Jones, he sat out for 4 games. And he's like, hey, I'll sit out for the whole damn season. We weren't playing very well. And guess what? We signed Chris Jones. It doesn't take long. Now, I get it. Maybe you have to, but if you get the top couple champions, say you get the top 4 or 5 champions that have pay-per-views coming up, or are going to be part of the pay-per-views, and they say, I'm not fighting, then what are you going to do? They have to come to the table and agree with you. They have to come to you're hurting their TV deal with ESPN.
That's
something will happen.
This is what I'm saying. But those people are the ones that have to step up. It has to be the leaders of the divisions, the champions.
Yep.
Right now, the champions are going, why am I going to do that? I'm making the good money that I want to make.
Well, let me just tell them this. If you guys all got together, every champion, and you guys said, look, we're not going to fight until we get 25% of the whatever it is, or the fighters get 25%. And I would guarantee you this, it would take less than 8 weeks. Less than 8 weeks for them to come to the table and say, look, let's get this deal done. We got to do something to make you guys happy, because their deal with ESPN guarantees that we're having pay-per-views, we're having shows every week. If you guys had a backbone and did it, then I would guarantee that the UFC would come to the table and go, hey, we've got to do something. The money's got to come. There's no way that they would not, John.
Huh?
Let's get a players association or fighter associations together. Even if you just had a UFC fighters association,
that's what it would be.
Yeah, it would have
to be,
and go from there. And I bet you, and you put the top guys, and who would be the representative? Someone like DC, who is a big UFC fan. He's him and Dana are buddy, you know. And if you had a Chael in there, or you had a DC in there. Like, they're going to do more. They're going to make sure that it works for the fighters as much as they can get away with and still make Dana happy. They've got to find that happy medium. And I think that everyone keeps going. I've heard some media go, they deserve 50% or they deserve 40%. Guys, I know they're making millions and millions of dollars every year, but let's slow play this. Let's go, hey, let's get up to 22 or 25%, somewhere in there in the next 2 years. And then you'll start seeing a significant difference for the fighters. And I know it doesn't benefit the fighters that are there now as much as it could if we said automatically 40%, but let's not kill the business so we don't have a place to go anymore. You don't understand what I'm saying? Like, I see both sides. I really am trying to be, I'm trying to look at both sides. And when I look at the UFC, I want them to make sure that they're still being profitable, to open up things like the UFC PI in Mexico, to open up the PI in Vegas, to start setting they're trying to make themselves a global company, which is only going to make more fighters or give more fighters opportunity to train all around the world and open gyms wherever they want, have maybe even open up UFC gyms or open up fight gyms where they want to be, have access to all of these things for them to have a career after fighting. I think what I've seen from media right now and people that they constantly are bashing the UFC and bashing, but like having UFC gyms nearby or having UFC PI nearby, and if the fighters that used to fight for the UFC or still have access to those things or have the availability to do things there or teach there. There's a guy out of remember Chris. God, he played in a movie. He was like the number one bad guy. He's Chris. He had Storot. Nah, he had like a Polish last name.
Oh, Chris Zazinski.
Yes, Chris works at a UFC. Christoph Zazinski, right?
Yeah.
So Christoph works at a UFC gym in I believe in Torrance, down in California. The guy is killing it. He's probably one of the best trainers in the whole company. The guy's crushing it. I want to say he's making 250, maybe close, like somewhere around 200 or 250 a year, and just killing it, man. Everyone loves him. He does a great job as a trainer. Having these out and about, and when fighters are done fighting, they have the opportunity to go work maybe at a UFC gym and build a brand, build their clientele, and make tons of money and do what they love. Get the hell out of here. Why open up your own gym? And John, you own a gym. I own several gyms. Like they're fucking pains in the asses. And your trainers and coaches, when you can work for a gym that you're already in and then go ahead and say, hey, now all the clients come to me. I have a name. I can make money. Christoph Zazinski, I think is his full name. But that guy, there's other fighters too. It's off the top of my head, but Ricardo Lamas owns a UFC gym in Chicago, crushing it, killing it out there. Cub Swanson, I believe, and even Michael Bisping, they own one in Costa Mesa. Doing well. I don't know the exact numbers on theirs, but they're doing well. BJ Penn owns like 6 or 7 of them. I think 6 of them now. He just opened up his one in Hilo. He's killing it too. You guys, you got to leave some meat for them on the bone to start opening up worldwide, because not all these fighters are all just from the States. Not all of them are from Mexico. Not all of them are from Brazil. They're going to start going more worldwide. You're going to start doing more stuff across the world. There's going to be opportunities for all fighters, not just the ones that are here locally, or not just the ones in Brazil and Australia or wherever, New Zealand. They're going to be trying to do this thing worldwide. Look and see the future and start shaping how you guys want your Fighters Association to be involved. Like, hey, let's give fighters the availability to have a like stock or whatever it is in the UFC gyms or in the UFC itself or whatever it is, like in locations worldwide. I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now, but just simply saying, give these fighters opportunities to be an investor into your company afterwards. And if that's just sweat equity, then that's sweat equity. But figuring those type of things out, I think will go a long way. And that can only be done if the fighters have a say. And hey, what do we want? How can we shape this deal? Until they can all get together and do this, and it all starts at the top. Whoever the champions are now need to speak up and say something and do it. And I know it sucks to be the one at the top. I worked so hard to get here. And, now I could be shooting myself in the foot and the UFC going, yeah, fuck you. We're done with you now. That could happen. But if you guys all do it, they're not doing that to you guys. Not all of you, So I know it's a risk to take. It really is. I get it. I understand.
Always.
But you got to bank on yourself if you want to make sure that the future is bright for everyone.